My name is Chester Crocker, and I teach the course called Conflict Management and International Security. That's MSFS 638. The main goal of the class is to make sure that students have a good grasp on the many sources of international conflict, and that they identify to themselves the assumptions about what those sources are. So that one has an explicit sense of what assumptions you carry into an analysis. Then students will, secondly, get introduction to the entire toolkit of conflict management techniques, which is a very substantial toolkit, and will learn about the importance of an integrated strategy that uses more than just one tool. There's no silver bullet in this business. You need an integrated strategy. And we'll explore that concept in the context of specific cases. And then another objective of the class is for the students to gain a familiarity with the leading scholarly and policy debates surrounding the field of conflict management. One thing I will not do is try to teach students what to think. What I will try to do is encourage students to be self-conscious about how they think and what assumptions they make. This class is really a generalist class. It is a comprehensive survey of a big field, and it means that we cover a lot of material in the course of a short semester of 14 weeks. And we look at the full range of analyses of the sources of conflict and the potential responses to conflict. It's important, the class is important because there's nothing more significant in the current international system than understanding where conflict and conflict management fits into the international system. So whether you're interested in primarily issues of ethics and norms, or issues of foreign policy trade-offs, issues of humanitarian concern or development concern, it's a very broad-ranging discussion that we have in the classroom. It's relevant to lots of different fields, intelligence, diplomacy, development, risk management. A lot of NGOs are working in the conflict space. Businesses are increasingly self-consciously aware of the fact that they are working in a conflict space. So I would say it's a generalist course for students throughout the MSFS program. Obviously, especially GPS students, but by no means only. And we usually have students from all the concentrations in the class. My background is a varied one. I've been involved in the academic world. I've been involved in government. I've helped to found more than one NGO. I've been a consultant. I do a lot of writing and editing and research. My MSFS experience started about 42 years ago, so I've been in and out of this environment for some years now. I was the first full-time director the MSFS program ever had, and helped to create the original core curriculum back in the 1970s. I came back to Georgetown in 1989 after having spent over 8 years in the State Department as Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. So I've done a whole bunch of different things at different think tanks and at the university here, which is kind of my home. I've done a fair amount of mediation work, both as a government official and as a post-government person in the NGO world. For a number of years, 12 years, I was the chairman of the board of the U.S. Institute of Peace, which is an officially funded but autonomous institution here in Washington. And in that context, while being chairman, helped to bring out a series of textbooks that I use as teaching materials for my courses here, but also had the chance to get involved in some what you might call track 2 or track 1.5 mediation exercises in such places as Kosovo and the Western Sahara, Mozambique and other places. So it's been a varied career, and I spent enough years in government, over 10, to understand what works in practice and what doesn't work, but the real challenge is to see what works in theory and to try and make theory and practice come together, which I try to do in both of my classes. The structure of this class is that we spend the first 4 weeks discussing the sources and debating the sources of international conflict with a wide range of readings of different points of view, different schools of thought. And once we have digested that material, which takes us all over the place in terms of different analytical frameworks for understanding conflict, once we've done that, I hope that students feel comfortable in recognizing that even when they don't think they have a theoretical framework, when they look at a conflict, in fact they do. And the issue is, can you make it more explicit? And so you look at a situation like Syria and you ask yourself, well, is the problem human agency? Is the problem Assad? Or is the problem a structural problem in the international system? Or is the problem based on failed modernization and the demographic boom that's going on in many of the urban areas in the Arab world? What is the reason why this is happening? Or is it the failure of the US and the Russians to be able to come up with a definition of common interests? What are the reasons? So that's the first section. The remaining 10 sessions of the class explore the full range of the conflict management toolkit. And that's 10 sessions, and we look at everything from political approaches, NGO approaches, mediation, the use of social media. We look at coercive measures, coercive steps, and changing doctrines on the use of coercive steps, such as peacekeeping and humanitarian intervention. We look also at normative development and the export and development of norms and what that does in the international system. And we end up looking at the whole question of weak states and failing states and what is the best way to think about them, not from the standpoint only of Americans, obviously, but of the international community as a whole. So that's the way the structure of the course is built. The assignments in the class are essentially, first of all, every student will do at least one, usually 2, oral briefings based on a reading which the student has volunteered to do. And in this way, since everybody is going to do that at some point or points during the semester, it's possible for us to cover a lot more material than if everybody had to read everything, because there's a lot of stuff to cover, a lot of readings on the syllabus. But some of them will be briefed by individual students, and that way it's much more efficient. So students do briefings. There are 2 short take-home exercises, 4 to 6 pages during the course of the semester, and then there's a final take-home exercise as well on a topic to be determined.